Right. We are streaming, and I also know for sure that the audio is working.
Oh, good. We're a little late again. It's our specialty, right?
Well, so the thing is, and this is something that I think neither of us are good at when we're scheduling stuff. Um, and I think it's for different reasons. So I'm really bad at leaving margin
Hmm.
just because I'm not good at scheduling stuff in the first place. And you, I think, are trying to be as efficient with all of your time as possible. And so everything kind of bumps up
Yeah.
against everything else. And in most cases, that's not a problem because you're the only one who's affected by one thing running over another thing. But in this case,
I wasn't the one who made us late, though.
so what we may need to do is we may need to change the time,
Hmm.
which we can talk about at some point. Because ideally, I would like to start streaming 10 minutes before the scheduled time and then do a really like tight show and
Yeah.
and then uh, finish it around the same time, probably. So stay continued. To be continued. Stay tuned. Stay continued. Mixing my things up. So yeah, I think, and you go ahead and talk. I just want to make sure your microphone's also working.
Check 1, 2. Microphone. Check.
Yep. All right. Think we are good to go.
All right.
So we're gonna do a little quick pre-show chat about today's topic. I thought would be good just because we didn't really get a chance to. I feel like this one's an easy one just to like riff on because, you know, we talked about some of it last week, but the way I set it up was like there's some obvious signs, and then I think there are also some signs that are not so obvious, but that like, you know, if we know what to look out for,
Yeah.
uh, because ideally you don't only take a break when it's like, you know,
Yeah.
you're already on empty. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a guy. I'm going to bring that metaphor in.
Hmm.
You doing okay?
Yeah, I just have a really bad headache, so I don't know how I'll be with words.
Yeah. Okay.
Words are hard today.
Words are hard anyway.
Hmm.
All right. Well, let's do this. We're going to start the show. Hello and welcome to In the Boat with Ben and Rachel. I'm Ben.
And I'm Rachel.
And this podcast exists to address common creator struggles and provide weekly inspiration for your creator journey. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Pretty well. I can't believe I just said pretty good.
It's okay. I
It's
mean,
not proper grammar.
it's not proper. But when you're thinking about a podcast is more conversational and so
Yeah.
it's yeah,
How are you?
I'm great.
There
Was
you go.
that
You avoid the
does
good
that
and
work?
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Um yeah, got a decent night's sleep. I worked out 4 days this week out of 5.
That's awesome.
That feels good because the week before it was the opposite. I think
Right.
it was like,
Like 1 day out of 5.
yeah, did I even work out one day?
I don't know
I
if
don't
you
think
did.
I did.
You were a little under the weather and had
Yeah.
an injury too, so
We did go for a run. That was nice.
yeah.
I just needed a break though, I think. And as it just so happens, the topic of today's episode is how do you know when you need a break?
Mm-hmm.
So there are definitely the obvious things. And then there are some not so obvious things. It's kind of a spectrum.
Yeah.
So like I'd like to go through and talk about everything on the spectrum, but just off the top, uh, or here at the top, I think it'd be fun to kind of get into like what are some of the obvious things. Maybe okay, this will be fun. Maybe we can kind of put the question on one another, like, how do you know? What are some things that I do that you're like, oh, he needs a break? So how do you know when I need a break?
I mean, this could be difficult territory right here. Could be a minefield. No, I think you, when you're stressed, you're super spacey. Like,
Okay.
you drop the ball on a lot of things. And that's how I'm like, oh, there's too much on his plate. He's going to have to get rid of some. And then you also turn into a grumpy old man when you need a break. I'm sorry, I had to say it. But it's like you're a very compassionate person,
Mm-hmm.
and you're patient most of the time and all of that. And it's like when the little things are bothering you and you're like complaining about the tone that somebody took on the phone with you or something like that, I'm like, oh, I think he might be stressed.
So you use the word old in there.
Well, it's like
The you're
the stereotypical,
like the stereotypical.
like
Okay, yeah,
cranky,
yeah, yeah.
You're not old. It's just that
Thanks.
you
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
you kind of slip into the, you know.
Yeah, like it's like that commercial where I think they're like playing flag football or something, and
Crotchety, that's the term. Okay.
yeah, yeah. And what is
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's a Snickers commercial. The only one I can think of, there are other ones that are actually more similar to what you're describing. The
Mm-hmm.
only one I can think of is um, it's got Betty White. They're playing flag football, and they go in and uh, tackle her,
Mm-hmm.
and just like and the guys are like, "What's going on?" And she's like, "I just, I can't remember what," but they give her a Snickers, and then
And then everything's better.
turns into a normal
Yeah.
or like a
Well,
young man.
speaking of food, that's another thing too, is that you tend to what was it you did the last week? You ate a whole thing of pumpkin JoJo's
Yeah, so Trader Joe's is a place where we shop mostly for regular groceries, but also
for their seasonal treats.
for their seasonal treats. And they have every year around this time, as as a lot of places do, they have a lot of pumpkin spice themed treats.
Mm-hmm.
They have these delicious, they're like their brand of Oreos, and they carry those cookies all year round, but they have a pumpkin spice themed version of those. So if you can imagine, it's like an Oreo. And I'm sure Oreo has.
Well, it's like a vanilla Oreo.
Yeah, it's like a vanilla
It's
Oreo
not like the
pumpkin
chocolate,
spice.
Yeah.
They're so good. And what I do when I get into those packages, I'll take 3 at a time, because it's like, okay, three is a reasonable number. Like it's 3 cookies instead of 1 or 2, which feels like, okay, that's a good amount of cookies, but it doesn't feel like I'm overdoing it.
Mm-hmm. Except you do that
Yeah, so the problem
12 times a day.
the problem is when I carry the box around the house with me and I take 3 at a time and do that
Yeah.
over the course of an hour and eat an entire box. Yeah, I'm probably going through something if I'm doing that.
Yeah. I think those are the clues that I get. Maybe not necessarily that you need a break, but that you're like stressed and overextended, which we talked about last week
Mm-hmm.
leads to needing a break. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so my turn.
yeah, oh gosh, here we go.
Yeah, I don't know. You're just you're such a consistent person. I think if I ever see a breakdown of that consistency, um that is kind of troubling. But sometimes you're you need a break and you're still staying consistent because so like if there is a break in consistency, that seems like a big deal.
Mm.
So that's one way. Um you get overwhelmed easier, more easily. Um yeah, those are really and when I say overwhelmed, I'm thinking specifically of like, we've got a large family and there's when everybody's home, there's a lot of noise and stuff like that. I have the kind of brain that does a really good job of tuning that out.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's easy for me to
Well, I have sensory things too that help that help that make me get overwhelmed in situations. So,
yeah, so you're already like constantly at the edge of that,
mm.
but when you're really stressed or like you're in need of a break, you've already passed that threshold
Yeah.
and so it's like an exposed nerve and and it just like you get overwhelmed a lot faster.
Mm.
So um and there are other obvious ones like if you stopped working out or if you went a couple of days without working out,
Yeah.
if you and this isn't necessarily like specifically for us, but I think if you do work that you most of the time enjoy and you find yourself really struggling to feel motivated,
Wait, so
there's a,
are we getting into the more like
there's kind of yeah there's this
general for
right,
everybody?
right, right. Yeah, there's kind of I'm going to acknowledge there's kind of this blurry line between just in general needing a break and going through like maybe approaching some kind of depression or something like that.
Yeah. No, I was going to say with
There's definitely some overlap.
yeah, with any kind of mental health issue, we have to be doubly careful and more I guess in tune with the things that are going on in our bodies and in our brains and that kind of thing because they're definitely I mean I think needing to take a break, depression can sometimes be that sign that we need to take a break too because when we're healthy and when we're enjoying things, we don't feel as overwhelmed as when we're down and when we feel overwhelmed. So I don't even know if that's making sense because my head is hurting so badly. But
No, it makes sense. So I think getting into some of the more subtle territory, what's what's kind of interesting to me is how we carry stress in our bodies, how we
yeah,
carry burnout. And so there may be some physical manifestations of that you don't necessarily think of as like, oh, I'm stressed out. A lot of what we talked about so far has been more like behavior and habits.
mm-hmm.
Um, but like having a headache uh, that is like out of the ordinary when you're not a person who has regular headaches, or maybe you've got extra aches and pains. Um,
Yeah, I was going to mention last year when we were going through, our house had flooded and we had contractors here all the time. It was really hard to get creative work done with so many new people in our house and all the noises.
yeah,
But I had a pretty serious injury that had no explanation and had to take, a whole month off of running and working out and everything. And I really feel like part of the reason it happened was because of all of the overwhelm and feeling I was also overtraining, and sometimes those things can alert us that there needs to be some kind of break, some kind of different
Yeah.
pattern or habit that we need to develop.
Yeah, I think if you're not necessarily doing anything out of the ordinary
Mm-hmm.
with your exercise regimen or whatever, but you're like suddenly injured. Um, and even, even as you get older, like you might think, oh, that's just, I'm just getting
Yeah.
older. But, but if it's truly like, it seems like it just happened out of the blue, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm, you know, I think that's worth considering, the possibility that that's you needing to take a break.
Well, and sometimes we can be in need of a break for so long and never allow ourselves to do that it just continues building up in the body and the mind, and then
Mm-hmm.
it suddenly comes to a head and it's like, oh, now we're forced to take a break. Sometimes that happens with sickness, with, I feel like the times that I've ever gotten the flu, which, your immune system is down anyway if you're super stressed, and then you get the flu and then you have to, you have to take several days off
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. I remember one time that I got the flu and I was standing at my computer trying to work, and my head just kept like, it felt so heavy that it just kept dropping. And I was like bound and determined to get my word count in for the day. And finally I was like, I'm like staring up at my computer screen, trying to hold my head up with my eyebrows. This is not working.
Yeah.
And finally climbed into bed, So,
So I had that happened to me recently, but it was, I think it was yesterday, because the repair person came yesterday for the,
oh yeah.
right. So it was, I had just like finished up some meetings and stuff, and then I had a little bit of work to do, and I was already feeling kind of tired and stuff, and I was trying to get stuff done to maybe take a nap. And then I got into that window
Mm-hmm.
when the repairman was supposed to show up. They say from 1 p.m. to
Yeah.
3 p.m. And so, like, it was just after 1 p.m. And I was like, well, as soon as I lay down and take a nap,
He's going to show up.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so I kept trying to work on stuff. And it was the same. Like, I was just dozing off
Yeah,
at my
yours was
computer.
just being tired, but
Well, yeah.
yeah.
But, so think about this. Like, maybe, maybe you are staying up too late.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of goes back to habits and stuff. Like, um, I I will tend to stay up late when I'm stressed, because
It's coping mechanism.
when I lay down, I've got all this stuff on my
Mm-hmm.
mind, and so it's kind of like, well, I'm gonna wait until I'm so sleepy that, like, as soon as my head hits the pillow, I'll fall asleep. What happens though is, like,
You binge on a show.
yeah, you start watching an episode, and then it's like, well, it's only 9:30.
Yeah.
I can watch another 45-minute episode. And then it's like, well, it's okay, it's 10:15 and I've got to wake up at 4 something. I know that sounds crazy for some folks, but that
That's our normal.
yeah, that's when we need to wake up in order to be able to work out and have some, like, personal time before everything else
The
happens.
madness happens. Yeah. Yeah, so
So,
the ways that our bodies feel, sometimes it can even be feeling unexplainably tired too, like even if we have good habits, going to sleep and all of that, sometimes we just feel tired all the time, and that can signal that we need a break. That's one of the big ones for me, is if I'm like, I just have no energy to work out or to do my work or any
mhm.
of that, and you already touched on it too, the passion for your work or for whatever you're doing. That is a big sign to me, is when I'm just like, oh, I don't want to do this,
Yeah.
because I love what I do, and most days, that's the driving force for me. And when that's hard to find, I look at my calendar and I try to see what is going on here. How long has it been since I took a break? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think there is that, like, you kind of slip into that feeling of monotony a little bit. Like,
Yeah,
it's
that's a
like,
big one.
oh, I'm doing this again.
Yeah.
Even if it's something when I think about, like, when I really stop and think about the kind of work that I get to do,
Mm-hmm.
I feel incredibly grateful and lucky. But the the day-to-day experience, like how I feel about doing my work can change from day to day, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that comes back to how I've managed my energy, and whether or not I'm feeling rested and kind of mentally and emotionally uh, full enough to approach my day with that kind of enthusiasm. Um, so yeah, that's definitely an indicator. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when you wake up in the morning, how do you feel about what's what's in front of you?
Some of that's hard too because sometimes that feeling can signal that we just need to do something a little bit new. One of the things that I'm trying to embrace and trying to learn as I get older and as I do what I do is that when we choose to do something, it doesn't mean that it has to be forever, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So even though I feel like I'm going to be writing forever, that doesn't mean that if today I write a picture book, I have to write picture books the rest of my life, you know? Um, it could be that I write something else, that I go on to nonfiction, or that I, you know, shift into poetry again. And I mean, I'm constantly writing those things anyway, but sometimes it just means, we need to shift our focus. And I guess that's a sort of break too, but it's not necessarily the break that we're talking about. But
Well, and I don't think it has to be a specific type of break. So
mm-hmm.
we could be talking about taking an actual vacation. We
Yeah.
could be talking about, like, taking 10 minutes to meditate,
Mm-hmm.
and anything in between. That, I think, is more for you to define based on how you're feeling, and what you need in order to get back to that sort of, like, optimal performance or experience. And yeah, so I don't think we need to be prescriptive about, like, the
Yeah.
type of break you should take. Um, the other thing I was thinking about, and this is sort of related to, like, whether or not you feel enthusiastic about the work you're doing. Oh, I did want to say this. So you'd mentioned doing something new,
Mm-hmm.
um, but not everybody is in a situation where, like, you can change the nature of the work that you're doing, and so it could be that maybe you take a break and you try to think about your work in a new way, or try to find something new to feel inspired about with your work.
Yeah.
And and that is kind of doing the same thing without necessarily, like, having to,
Leaving your job or whatever.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, do something different.
Yeah, don't do anything drastic. Just, you
Of
know,
course. So
sometimes those things are moments that we can evaluate a little more.
right. So kind of related to that is when there are things like, every day there are things that need to be done that are not necessarily like, oh, if I had a choice, I would have put this on my list.
Mm-hmm.
And um and that's just life, like, you can try as much as you possibly can to eliminate all of those kinds of things from your schedule, but there's always going to be something that's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's a little bit tedious. But I know that I need a break when. So and this is like, I don't know if I want to, this is kind of a gross example. We had, and our air conditioning was clogged, and there's a drain line for like the water runoff from the condenser.
Mm-hmm.
Without getting too technical, that got blocked up. It's supposed to drain out of our house. And that causes the AC to stop working. And I didn't realize that was what was going on. So we paid $200 to have
somebody come tell us.
Yeah. But the repair man had a pump that he connected to the pipe, the drain pipe, to like get rid of the blockage.
Mm-hmm.
And where it drains, like the pipe runs past where our washer and dryer are in our pantry, and it like caused some of the gunk to overflow and kind of get on the floor behind the washer. So I had to go down there and move those. I had to go down and move the washer and dryer out of the way, and I put a towel down, and I was like, okay, I'm going to put the towel down and let the towel soak up this stuff. And then in a little bit, I'll, and Vera in the chat said a cup of vinegar. I'm going to share this because this is just good advice for anybody who has an AC. A cup of vinegar during the months you run your AC will prevent blockage.
That's good.
We had, I normally I clean it out probably once every other year.
Yeah,
I'm bad about doing it consistently, but about once every other year. And what got us this year was that we had the flooding, and then it was just all the construction. So like all of the dust and dirt and everything. I tried to do my best to like clean stuff out and keep it from, but it's, they recommend if you have major construction done in your house to have
getting professionals out.
Yeah, to have somebody come out and like professionally clean your AC unit, because it's just, it can be prone to getting all that gunk in there. So anyways, I have not, that was a couple of weeks ago, I think.
Yeah.
I have not gone and picked up that towel.
I did not realize that's why that towel was on the floor.
Oh, sorry. So I have not picked up that towel, and it's probably dry by now. And I also have not moved the washer and the dryer back into place, which is, it's creating a little bit of a headache because it's messing with where we put stuff.
Yeah.
But
lunch boxes.
I've just, when I think about doing it, it would take me less than a minute.
Yeah.
Like if I timed myself right now, it would take me less than a minute to take care of that. But for some reason, the thought of doing it, I'm like, ugh. Like I just feel overwhelmed thinking about doing it. And so that's another sign to me, is when things that seem trivial,
the little things,
feel like they're overwhelming.
Yeah.
Then that's probably a sign you might need a break.
Yeah. Agreed.
I hope that wasn't like, when I said this is kind of gross, the story that I was about to, like, people were like, okay, I'm out.
Oh, all the gunk. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it could have gone in any direction.
Yeah. I never know. I never know with you. So.
Yeah. So yeah, that's another one. What are some other ones that are maybe a little bit more subtle?
Well, I mean, I feel like the aches and pains in the body, the just lack of passion, those are the big ones for me. Yeah, I don't even know if I can think of any more.
So this can be a lot of different things, but a lot of times when we need a break, it really comes down to feeling depleted of energy. And our brains are actually really good at conserving energy. It's one of their, it's like it's one of the main functions
Mm-hmm.
of our brains is to find ways to conserve energy. That's why we build habits. That's why um, we will tend to take shortcuts when we can, um, because like until very recent human history, there was a real danger of just running out of energy, um, because of food scarcity and that kind of thing. So, and in some places in the world, that's still true.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're going throughout your day, and maybe you find yourself cutting corners that you normally wouldn't cut, conserving energy in ways that you normally wouldn't conserve, like, um, and you might think of it as, you might say to yourself, oh, I'm just being so lazy today.
I do that a lot. Yeah.
I'm being so lazy. Or you might tell yourself, like, you might try to reason with yourself that something that you normally do because it's important to you, you're not doing.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, well, it's really not that important that I like wash out this lunch container, because there's, it doesn't have anything wet in it, or whatever that would cause it to grow germs. It's a very specific example. I'm trying to, and I'm trying to think of those specific examples.
Yeah.
Um, I guess I don't need to dust off every shelf,
Yeah.
or like I don't need to move the books, or and dust under them, or whatever. So like things like that. If you're reasoning yourself out of doing something that you normally do because you think it's important,
Mm-hmm.
or you are telling yourself, "Oh, I'm being lazy," because there's something you're not doing.
Yeah.
I think that can be.
I remember, well, actually, it's happening like right now. So I do a to do list for my work, and then I have a separate to do list for like personal things, And I think it's been like no, it's been more than that. It's been like 2 months that these two things have been on my to do list. It's to buy our oldest a yearbook and to get him signed up for driver's ed. And it's been on my to-do list for 2 months, and like, how long would that take me to do? But I just haven't done it because I feel so tapped out everywhere else. It's
Yeah.
like one more thing, just my brain can't handle one more thing. So
And where
I go make granola instead.
yeah, I call, like, things like that, I call procrasta working. So if you find yourself doing things that you feel like you have more energy, I mean, that's an energy conservation thing, is when you do work that's not quite as important because you're
Mm-hmm.
putting off other work,
Yeah.
because the work that needs to be done takes more focus and energy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say, like, kind of in the same category, in the place where it's maybe the most acute, is when it's things that you enjoy. So maybe for you, it's like laying down and reading a book.
Yeah, if I don't have energy to even do that, that's a big,
Yeah.
big sign.
Yeah. So, um, spending time with someone you care about.
Mm-hmm.
So those are, I think those are just some small things to look out for. And it doesn't necessarily, like, any one of these things could have some other, underlying
Yeah,
reason.
but it's worth evaluating.
Yeah. The question you're asking is, when you it's really about being tuned into those things, so that when you
Mm-hmm.
notice, oh, I'm I'm not behaving in a way that's normal for me, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing my habits the way I normally do, or I'm telling myself that I'm lazy, or I'm not spending time doing things that I normally enjoy. um, to be able to notice those things in the first place, and then ask, is that because I'm running low on energy and I need to take a break? I need to refill.
I think there's another subtle one too that happens in our minds, and that's I tend to go to this like really negative place sometimes when I know that I need, not when I know that I need a break, but it's kind of a signal to me that I need a break. And it's like a negative place regarding my work and the value that I bring through that work. And I recognized it this last, like I had a sabbatical week this week because I just needed some time off. And I had a therapy session right before this week, and I noticed it during that therapy session because my therapist kept saying, these are stories that you're telling yourself, even when people have, like, you know, told you how much they value what you do. And so when I notice those stories that I'm telling myself turning into negative places, that's kind of a sign that something is off as well.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes that could just be, it could be my depression, or it could be that and like I said, depression can sometimes mean that you need time off as well because you're running too hard. But yeah.
This is really interesting. I wonder if it's also tied to energy in some way. And what I'm thinking about is, like, you're describing it as your thoughts are turning negative. What I wonder could be going on. What I wonder if, I can't know if, I don't know.
I wonder if
I can't
what's
talk
going
right now.
on.
Words are hard, y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I wonder might be going on is, I still feel like that's not right.
Yeah. Just say it.
Okay. So I'm so sorry, everybody. This is terrible. We have thought patterns, and those thought patterns are influenced by our upbringing, things that we've experienced in our childhood. Well, really anything that we've experienced in our lives, but some things get locked in childhood. You things that are just true about your personality or whatever. And, as you mature and you recognize, oh, these thought patterns aren't serving me, they're not helping me. You can't just turn off that. It's not like you can just chop that wiring in your brain.
It takes work.
It takes a lot of work. And as you, and that work takes energy. So that by itself, but even, and this is happening, without you really being aware of it either. You may not be aware of some of the thought patterns you have, and you've learned to work against those things, to kind of counteract the effects of those thoughts. And so you might have thought patterns that are negative based on your past trauma, a lot of negative self-talk. But you also realize, okay, those things aren't serving me. That's not, I know they're not true. That's not who I am. That's not helping me do my best work.
Yeah.
And so, like, you have learned to, like, you've kind of programmed against those things, but that takes energy while you're still trying to, like, prune those things. And when your energy is depleted, those pathways are able to work uninhibited. And so it feels like, oh, there's a lot more negativity going on in my head.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, because I'm not like a neuroscientist or anything like that, I can't say like that's what's happening,
Yeah, but I think it has a lot to do with that. I think creative people too I won't say that it's a unique challenge to them, but because of the nature of our work and it being something that we put out into the world, and there's such a subjective reception of our work that it can really, like, turn into a snowball effect for negativity,
Well, and I think creative people do tend to put a part of their identity into their work.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of brings up an interesting conversation we've been having about, like, you know, I've been asking the question, is some of my creativity something that I learned to do because it was helping me um, find acceptance and a sense of belonging? Like, did I did I work to become more creative because I saw that, like, oh, when I make something that people like, then they like me.
Mm.
That's a recipe for, like, me putting my whole identity into my
Yeah.
work. And I wonder if that just is kind of a natural, like, every creator has some measure of their personal identity in the work that they
Yeah,
produce.
I think
And
so.
then, you put that work out there and it's received, sometimes positively, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
negatively.
Well, and every work is received in that way too. It's not like what you put out there is going to be overwhelmingly positive. There's always going to be negative, and we tend to focus on the one negative outside of the 20 positives.
And that's a natural thing too,
Mm-hmm.
because, like, we're we're so much more sensitive to danger than we are to safety. Um, because when you're talking about survival, like, at its very basic level, um, I don't I don't need to be aware and alert when I'm safe. When I'm in danger,
Mm-hmm.
that's when I need to be paying attention. And so I think it's just natural that, like, we'd be more sensitive to those things.
Yeah.
But that's why they sting so much more, because it's like you got 100 positive comments,
Mm-hmm.
and then this one person said something, and
That
it's
one
like,
arse.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm the worst. you know
Yeah. It's terrible. Why do we do this to ourselves?
yeah. um that went in an interesting direction, and I saw you write down, I think it'd be fun to talk a lot
Yeah.
more about that whole,
Mm-hmm.
thing about identity. And but yeah, the I think a lot of that does come back to energy, and just being able to recognize, like, oh, the energy that I normally spend keeping those kinds of thoughts and those attitudes at bay, I don't have as much of that energy, and so, like, I'm seeing more of that in myself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
um yeah.
And it helps with recognizing those patterns. I'll push this every time I can, but journaling helps.
Yeah.
I mean, everything we've talked about today it kind of all boils down to self awareness and
Mm-hmm.
recognizing the patterns that indicate that we need breaks and stuff. And I feel like we have a hard time doing that if we don't somehow have some kind of journaling practice.
Yeah. We also started the episode, and I want to fully agree with that. And I feel like, in terms of what is most effective at having that self-awareness and being able to recognize those things, I think that it definitely takes first place.
Mm-hmm.
We started the episode asking the question of one another, like, how do I know when you're in need of a
Yeah.
break? How do you know when I'm in need of a break? And I think that's also another thing we can do, is we talked about this in the previous episode too,
Yeah.
is having people in your life. Um, but, like, inviting people to let you know when they see that you're not yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and not in a, like, oh, it's happening to you again, but
Yeah.
just noticing, and then being like, hey, is everything going okay?
Yeah.
um can go a long way. And I think inviting is a good way to put that, because it's not like, hey, I need you to be this person for me, but it's more like, um I want to be my best self, and if you ever notice, like, I'm not being myself, feel free to check in with me. Like
Yeah.
I'm not going to be offended by that.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes our partners in creative work, if we have partners in creative work or people who consistently look at our work and read our work before it's like out in the world,
Mm-hmm.
can help us with that too, because I think sometimes a way that we can tell that we need a break is we don't produce our best stuff. And I have an agent who's really good at being like, yeah, I think you can do better. This isn't your best. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, she's probably right. Like, I need to go back and take a break from this project, let it sit for a while, and then pick it back up and do my best work, you know?
Yeah.
So I think having those kinds of people too are important for creative people.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very fortunate to work in a place where uh it's part of the culture
Mm-hmm.
to, well, and it's part of the culture because of an underlying belief that people who have energy and who feel taken care of, who feel like they're filled up, who've taken the breaks that they need, are going to be able to do their best work.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I've taken, just in the short time that I've worked there, I've taken a few breaks here and there, at the request of other people in the company,
Yeah.
which is really rare. It's very rare. If you can find a place
I mean, as long as they're not
or
like, we
or
need to get rid of
people,
Ben.
no,
Make
I
him
mean,
take a
I don't think
break.
so.
I'm just kidding.
Or people like that to work with,
Yeah.
you definitely should.
Mm-hmm.
Highly recommend it.
Yep. It's a good place.
All right. I think that's going to do it. You have any
Yeah.
more thoughts?
No.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to help out the show, you can go to In the Boat with Ben. No, sorry, intheboatpodcast.com.
You're going to have to write an outro.
I know, I need to. Go to intheboatpodcast.com, sign up for our newsletter, and also share this podcast with somebody else who you think might benefit from the topics we discuss. Rachel, if they want to find you, where can they go?
RachelTolson.com.
And I'm at bentolson.com, and I'm also at Ben Tolson on all of the things. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. All right. I don't really have like an after show sort of topic.
Yeah.
I can tell you need a break.
Really? I just took a whole week break.
I know, but you have a headache.
I do have a headache. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. I did read a lot this week. So, like, I read, I think I have like a few lines of a book in front of me. And I think that'll be the 5th or 6th book I've finished this week.
It's a lot of reading.
So it is a lot of reading, yeah.
I don't know. I think you miss your work.
I do. Once, toward the end of the week that I take off, I start like, I really want to write. I really need to do it.
Well, and
so
it's been kind of an unusual week.
Mm-hmm.
Like we had our anniversary weekend
Mm-hmm.
before things started, and the week's been kind of hectic and strange because it's a shorter week for the kids.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of stuff happening today. Like we're going into a busy weekend.
Yeah. Busyness makes me feel stressed.
Yeah. So I feel like I need a break.
Our calendar is really full too. Like, I haven't even wanted to look at it lately because it's just full. I feel overwhelmed when I look at full calendars. So,
yeah.
but,
I don't like it. There are so many wonderful things to enjoy about this time of year and the season that we're going into.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate that part of me is like looking forward to being past it.
Oh, yeah.
I need to work on that. Maybe I should journal.
Probably.
Figure out what that's about. Stay tuned. Maybe next week I'll be able to tell you that I figured it out and now I feel great
Uh-huh.
and I'm looking forward to everything and I don't feel stressed at all.
Everything is awesome.
Everything is awesome. Yep. All right. Well, thanks again for tuning in and we'll talk to y'all next time.